Hello. As promised, I'll be returning to the Amagi today. Now, it's still not a fully upgraded Amagi. The last time I featured the Amagi, it was stock. This time, however, I have gotten the hull upgrade. So, while I still don't have the range, I only have 18.1 km range, and I still don't have the speed upgrade, I at least have the hull upgrade this time. So no more 59k HP Amagi. Instead, we got a massive, nice chunk, aka 66k HP, and we should be significantly tankier because of that. The map type is Epicenter. Now, the very first thing I target is, of course, Belfast. They ship Squishy, Radar, Self-Smoke, HE Spam, IFHE, all those combinations make it a very alluring target, you might say. Of course, I try to take a shot at him right as he slows down for a smoke. Sadly, no citadels or anything, but I did do 8k damage to him, and considering he has no heal, he'll at least feel it for a while. Now, the Amagi is a very strong battleship. It's very popular and competitive right now for a good reason. As long as you remain angled in this thing, and thanks to the great firing angles, you are actually capable of remaining quite well angled at all times, unless you mess up. Of course, great accuracy, strong guns. This combination of all these things coming together makes it, of course, a very strong battleship. There is a carrier in this game, however, and it appears to be a Strike Lexington. We have a Shokaku, 222 Shokaku. Usually, I'd expect a 222 Shokaku to absolutely, completely crush a Strike Lexington, because the Shokaku is much, much better. But I'm playing on the NA server, and so far my experience on the NA server is that most of the people who play Shokakus or IGN carriers on this server, they really don't have any idea what they're doing. So watching IGN carriers lose to US carriers is quite common on the American server, because the overall quality of play is significantly worse, and you have to know what you're doing in order to beat the US carriers, because US carriers are significantly easier to play. So I don't have the highest of hopes regarding this. I'm hoping he'd be able to win him, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, it appears already, well, he's doing some strikes, so I have high hopes of that. I did score a citadel and finish off the Atago, which is of course a good start. The Atago for some reason pushed far too aggressively. I mean, you can play quite daringly with that Atago, but charging in full broadside to multiple battleships, that's a good way to get yourself killed. Turpid's turning to show broadside. This should be a fairly good volley. Not really. 2 overpens somehow. That's a common thing. You somehow get overpens on the superstructure of battleships, especially German battleships, it feels like. Oh, turning in to make sure I don't give him any free hits. He does get one, but it's an overpen because I turned in. Amagi in the back. Of course, as I've said before, the Amagi at long range, the Turtleback is not effective at long range because the shells plunge past it, or well, through it in this case, because of course the angled armor does nothing against plunging shells. However, my aim was off a bit, so I only got one overpen. We do have a ship lead at this point, but I am a bit worried about this push I'm seeing down south of me. You can see that multiple ships from my team are pushing in. And while I usually like the idea of pushing, the problem here is that they are 2 or 3 ships, and they are pushing into a crossfire against the entire enemy team. If you look at the ships south of me on the minimap, you can see that there's ships all around them, in a horseshoe shape all around them. So they cannot angle against any of those ships, and they're gonna get shot at from every angle. So this push is poorly timed, it's far too soon, it's poor positioned, it's multiple things just terrible, and I can already tell from right now that that push is going to absolutely not work. The carrier is now going for them as well, because, well, they're all alone. The old Gneisenau is all alone, which makes him an easy target for the carrier. Our own carrier doesn't seem to understand to strafe those planes. In fact, he didn't shoot down a single plane. He reacted far too late. So, yeah, that push, I'm pretty sure they're all dead. So I see no point in me charging in after them or trying to save them at this point, because there's nothing I can do. They are terribly overextended. out of position. A very common thing in you see battleship players do. They don't pay attention to their surroundings, and always keep in mind one of my thumb rules for battleships. If you're going to push in somewhere, is it the position where you can angle your armor against your opponents? If you cannot, if you're forced to give constant broadside to someone and you have no options not to do it, then don't do that push. It's going to fail. And you saw these guys, they tried to push in, but because of the position of the enemy ships, they just ended up being surrounded and shot from all sides. And even something as tanky as a German battleship just dies very, very quickly. You saw how quickly that Gneisenau melted. I did catch the Lexington off guard. The idea, I was hoping here to get some citadels, because I needed citadels to be able to kill him in time. And at this point, I think it's too late to have any chance of killing him. I needed citadels with the first volley, a big devastating strike at the start so that I could have time to finish him off. Right now, I don't think there's any point shooting him anymore, because he's going to sail away, and of course I don't have the range mod, so I only have 18.1 km range, so that Lexington is going to move out fairly quickly. Also, there's 3 battleships in front of me, including, of course, there's a DD that was last spotted here, and if I was the enemy DD, I would be waiting there for someone else than these battleships, waiting basically for me to push in so that I could punish him. So I'm just gonna play it safe and back off, because the risk of the enemy DD torping me there, plus all these battleships, is pretty damn high. You did notice, by the way, I got a 19k damage on the broadside turrets. That's of course something I mentioned in my low tier guides for German battleships. Just because you have a turtleback doesn't mean you're invincible, you can still eat massive damage. And of course, the Hatsuharu I was talking about, the enemy DD, he was in fact sitting there waiting for me. So if I had tried to chase the Lexington, if I had to try to push in there, not only would of course all the battleships have focused me, but there would have been a DD waiting for me. So that would of course resulted in a quick death. Now the lead we had has quickly basically gone to shit at this point, because this horribly ill-timed push from my team gave them a lot of kills, and now we're pretty far behind. My Shokaku is playing far too far back as well. You often see carriers do this kind of thing where they hide at the very back. They think it's safe, but the only thing it really tends to do is increase the time it takes for their planes to travel so much that they're not really able to do that much, because, well, most of the time they spend waiting for the planes to travel back and forth. Instead, he should be pushed up next to one of these islands near me, where he could strike from very close range. But of course, as I've said, on American servers, the carrier play in general has been fairly abysmal, so not expecting too much on that side. We lost another ship. In fact, our entire right flank seems to be having some issues now. I have a North Carolina that's still full HP behind me, so I don't really know what he has been doing. I assume sniping from the backline most of the game. Whereas, of course, if you notice my positioning, I've been trying to, well, first of all, make sure that there are very limited angles I can get shot from, and second of all, stay fairly close to the epicenter. Gneisenau was waiting for me there, and he now rushes me as I move, but I was of course planning on this. I knew he was there, he was spotted earlier, and if you are in an Amagi or North Carolina or whatever, and something like this happens, Gneisenau tries to rush you, or Tirpitz or whatever, some sort of torpedo battleship boat, just do what I do. I'm cutting away from him, I'm angled, and I'm moving away from him. What exactly can he do from this angle? Not very much. I mean, he's slightly faster, but it take him ages to catch up. He can't torpedo from that angle, he can't really do anything. And I'm just drawing him in. Just like our own battleships pushed in too deep, I'm drawing him in too deep. And I'm drawing him so deep that he's gonna have to... he's ending up in the same dilemma that those guys from our team did earlier. He has to angle against the North Carolina that was behind me, or he has to angle against me. He cannot angle against both because of the way I sailed away. If you look at the minimap, we formed this nice triangle, me, the Gneisenau, and the North Carolina, and Gneisenau now has to pick and choose who will he angle against. He cannot angle against all of us. So ultimately, after eating a ton of damage from the North Carolina, it appears he will finally angle towards the North Carolina, which is now the first time that I actually even bother shooting at him or dealing with him in any way, because he's not been worth wasting my shells on. I have had much better targets to shoot at. Never, if you have a perfectly angled battleship chasing you, but he's not really able to do anything to you like this guy. Why would I waste shells on him when I got broadside New Mexicos and stuff like that that I can be shooting instead? So I haven't been wasting any shells on him. He can chase me all he wants. He's not really doing anything besides, well, chasing me and getting hit by the North Carolina. Now, this is the first time I actually decided to shoot him because, well, I don't even get the kill. The North Carolina kills him off. Lost almost all his HP doing it though, because he gave so much broadside for some reason. But that's exactly how would you deal with those. I see people start firing like if you have no one else to shoot at and you have to shoot at an incoming German battleship, aim for the guns and superstructure where you can deal significant damage. Don't aim for the hull, which will just bounce your shells. But in general, pushing in like that in a German battleship, if the enemy battleship doesn't really want to fight you but just decides to sail away like I did, there's not really a lot you can do. And it's super frustrating for him, and it's quite amusing as the player itself. Because that Gneisenau, he thought he could rush me, but I just turned away and sailed away from him, and he got pretty much outplayed completely by such a simple move. Now, however, the game has gotten quite hard. They have 6 ships, we have 2, and it's me and this pretty, so far, not very useful Shokaku on my team, who's been reversing all the way to the corner of the A line. So I'm gonna obviously have a bit of a struggle here, trying to save this game at this point. I do have a nice chunk of health, I still have 2 heals, and my positioning is quite good. You notice that I keep my positioning in such a way that I fight as few opponents at a time as possible. I'm using the terrain. The terrain protects me from SOAP, that Tirpitz, it protects me from New Mexico. The only one that can shoot at me is the Tirpitz in front of me, the Mark Sniper dude. And this is exactly how I like it. Being outnumbered, if you're only fighting one at a time, it's not that big of a deal. In fact, you want to reduce all 1 versus 1s into a series. All like outnumbered situations like this, you want to reduce them into 1 versus 1s. Once again, Tirpitz rushing me, just like the Gneisenau did. I don't even shoot the angled Tirpitz, I instead go for the Hatsuharu because he showed himself in the open like that. And I'm just turning away, kiting away. The best way to deal with Tirpitzes is to sail away. He shoots, I'm already angled enough that it doesn't really do too much damage. He goes for his torpedoes, but he's giving broadside, which means I will do significant damage to him. 4 penetrations, almost 15,000 damage. At this range you don't get overpens or bounces from the hull, you just get full penetrations, and that of course crushes German battleships. Yes, I cannot citadel him, I don't need to citadel him to kill him. All I need to do is do heavy penetrative damage. So Hatsuharu was forced to smoke up, because he was afraid of more incoming damage. The Tirpitz was killed, and once again I see that the Tirpitz is coming from that angle and the New Mexico is from this one, so I angle towards them both. Once again, I'm creating distance between me. If I tried to rush these guys, I would end up in a situation where it was impossible for me to angle against both at the same time. Here now though, I'm able to angle, I'm giving a very angled broadside to the Tirpitz, and I'm straight up sailing right away from the New Mexico, which means of course they're gonna struggle to deal any sort of damage to me. So I'm just gonna keep sailing away. I'm not giving any unnecessary broadside yet. My front guns haven't turned yet, so there's no point to turn around yet. You often see this mistake done by people where they turn before their guns have they turn their ship before the guns have turned, which is of course pointless. Only now, when my guns are actually turned, do I bother to turn in to shoot the full broadside at him. He gives me a flat, nice broadside, so that volley should be enough to actually kill him right off. Not quite. I unluckily gonna get 2 hits and 2 overpens, so I do risk some big return fire here. So I turn in sharply to try to mitigate that return fire, but I still take 6,000 damage, which was unfortunate. I was hoping my volley would kill him off right away, but that did not happen. So turning in, I deal with the next biggest threat, which is the New Mexico, since the Tirpitz is behind cover, to quickly get rid of the New Mexico. Don't underestimate lower tier battleships. If you get him broadside like that, you can still eat a lot of damage, so I try to deal with him as quickly as possible. The Hatsuharu is of course still an issue. He's trying to torque me, which is one of the reasons I'm kind of constantly changing course, direction, speed and such things, because I don't want to be deleted by this dude. Here you see his torps. As expected, he's constantly trying to pick me off. I'm trying to avoid letting him land a single torpedo because I'm out of heals at this point. I'm telling my carrier that he should be spotting him, And ultimately, the optimal way of doing this would be using one empty bomber to spot the DD, because that one bomber will probably not make a big difference. He can use the fighters to deal with the Lexington and torpedo bombers to deal with the else or everything else, but he's a bit off. Anyway, the Turpit's hiding behind a rock. While the Turpit's hides behind a rock, I deal with the perf that finally showed himself. It looks like the Turpit's is finally going to push through. I have 2 fires, I pop my repair. Never use it on 1 fire, always use it on 2. And the Turpit's tried to sneak out, get rid of him. And now I'm left against the perf. Now the perf is sailing straight away from me, which is actually not something you should do in Royal Navy cruisers, or well, Australian cruisers, because you can easily citadel them through the deck or just do heavy damage, since they can't angle. Well, if they're sailing like he does, sailing in a straight line, it's quite easy for an accurate battleship like the Amagi to delete them. So I do unlock my Kraken here. So we went from a 2 versus 6, well, kind of felt like a 1 versus 6, because I still haven't really seen this carrier actually hit any torpedoes. But we went from that into now a 2 versus 2. Big issue, he sets a fire on me. That is a huge issue. I want him to keep him spotted though. At this point the enemy team is starting to wonder what the hell is going on, since they were so clearly winning this game, and I have someone asking Flamu question mark. I guess he recognized my name. But the issue here is this fire is ticking steadily, and I need this DD to be kept spotted. I told the carrier that he needs to spot him. I said spot Hatsuharu please earlier in the game. Hopefully he will keep him spotted, and my carrier doesn't keep him spotted. So I have fully loaded guns. I might be able to delete this Hatsuharu, which might win us the game, since then the Shokaku only has to deal with the Lexington. But our Shokaku once again drops the ball and stops spotting him. I tell him spot DD ASAP. I got Lexington left bombers coming in, and the left click bombs of course delete me. And that's quite unfortunate, because well, I could have been able to maybe deal with this Hatsuharu and save our carrier having to do with this. I tell him you stopped spotting him, sad face, because well, we could have maybe even made that 2 versus 6 into a victory. But unfortunately, because of this, our carrier now has to deal with both the DD and the enemy carrier. He goes nope, he doesn't understand even what he did wrong. But of course, the game ends here. The game ends soon after this. The DD and the Lexington both together completely crush my Shokaku, and it ends up in a defeat, which is a shame, because I was quite hoping we might turn this 2 versus 6 into a win. Anyway, 208k damage, which is of course always nice. I wish I had had my range upgrade on the ship, because then I could have killed the Lexington earlier in this match and maybe turned it around. 600k credits for loss is quite nice. Looking at the team score, we can see that basic speed 1.6k, but overall my team kinda dropped the ball on this one. Not really too much to do here. Ultimately, I did make some mistakes. I gave too much broadsides at times. I was too confident when I shot the Turpits. I expected my volley to kill him, but you always have to take into account battleship RNG, and when my volley did not kill the Turpits, I ate some unnecessary damage that I could have avoided, which might have let me live for a bit longer at the end. But those are things to keep in mind whenever in this commentary you saw me give too much broadside and eat damage. Make a note of it, because every battleship player makes those mistakes at times, and it's always good to identify them and try to minimize it as much as possible, because that's how you become a better battleship player. Detailed report, of course, I tanked 2.3 million potential damage, which is always nice. 119k damage received in total, and well, just quite a strong game from the Amagi. In fact, I'm quite enjoying this battleship. I used to enjoy it a lot in the past, and it's still very strong. I'll probably return to this once more once I have the ship fully upgraded, since I'm still lacking 2 of the upgrades. Anyway, that was my Amagi commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.